who can break all this stuff down for us. Jim Jordan, good to see you.
Well, good to see you. Congratulations, guys, on the show. Good to be with you tonight.
It's a special day. It's week 2, day 2 of this show, and you're on. Yeah. And listen, this story breaks, and we're like, we have Jim Jordan tonight? How great could this be? Give me your take on this, Jim. I mean, the fact that we have now another breaking story. Again, the FBI searched the Penn Biden Center 2 months ago, more than 2 months ago.
Yeah. No, the reason they haven't been transparent with this is because they didn't think it was ever going to get out, because they had a shared understanding. This is not my words. This is the Washington Post reporting, shared understanding what the White House did with the Department of Justice, saying that they were going to keep this quiet. So they thought they could keep it quiet. And then it breaks on January 9th about what happened at the Penn Biden Center, and the White House admits, okay, yeah, those were found there. At the time, they already knew about the other documents in the garage because they were found on December 18th, but they don't confirm that. They don't confirm. They don't even tell us about that. So this is the problem. There's always this double standard we talk about all the time, but it's so obvious here. You have the raid on President Trump's house, no raid on President Biden. You have pictures taken of President Trump, the folders, no pictures taken of President Biden. And then, of course, you have just the fundamental issue where you have one person who was actually President of the United States, President Trump. Of course, President Biden wasn't when these documents, these classified documents, were moved to these locations. And I would maybe point out one other thing. It's one thing to have documents stored in a locked room guarded by Secret Service. Very different thing to have documents at your garage or at a think tank funded by the Chinese. So that's what I think the American people see. Yeah.
Congressman Jordan, today, House Oversight, I believe it was the National Archives General Counsel. Do you know anything about the meeting today? Can you give us any insight into that?
Well, I was there for part of that interview with the general counsel from the National Archives. I do know there was some, again, to this double standard issue. The pattern had always been at the end of the administration, someone from the National Archives would be there assisting the White House in complying with the Presidential Records Act until the end of the Trump administration. First time they didn't have someone from the National Archives go there and help coordinate and put together how those things were going to get transferred to the archives. I think that's interesting because they broke pattern, they broke protocol. They had someone there during when President Obama was leaving the White House. They had someone there for 2.5 months overseeing the collection of records to comply with this statute, but they didn't for President Trump. Now, why is that? I mean, so I asked questions about that particular issue, and there was a host of other things that came up in the course of that interview that I think the American people are going to find interesting.
So I don't know how much you can tell us, Congressman, but was this a setup? Did the National Archives set Trump up to go, he may take documents that are classified, and a year down the road we can go after him and try to prosecute him for that as well? Was it a setup?
The general counsel today didn't seem to have an answer for why it was done that way, because I asked him a number of things. I said, well, did the White House tell you they didn't want anyone? Well, no, they didn't do that. Well, then why didn't you follow protocol? Why didn't you do what you'd always done in previous administrations? I don't know, but I do think it's interesting. So at the end of the Obama administration, they did have someone there. Well, then why did Joe Biden take classified documents and take documents that should have been given to the National Archives? So I think you can look at it the other way. I don't know if it was a setup for President Trump, but what I do know is they had someone there at the end of the Obama administration, and somehow Joe Biden takes documents he's not supposed to have and has them in his garage, at the think tank, and at his home. I find that interesting.
So the Justice Department has rejected your request, the House request for records on Joe Biden's handling of the classified information, the classified documents found at Biden's home in Delaware and the Penn Biden Center. What's your recourse as chair of the Judiciary Committee, and then, of course, with Congressman Comer as chair of Oversight? What's the next step there?
Yeah, Dagan, great question, but understand it's not just that they've told Mr. Comer and our office no, and our two committees no. They've told the intelligence committees no. It's not just Republicans who want to know what's going on here. It's Senator Warner, Democrat chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee. That is crazy. The idea that, oh, you can't even tell the intel committees what these documents are about. Or frankly, it's not just they shouldn't just, it should be they should tell them what it's about, but they should frankly let the intel committees see those documents. We're a separate and equal branch of government. The idea that they're not doing that is ridiculous. And even Democrat senators understand it's ridiculous.
So, Congressman, then is the step here to hold anyone who doesn't comply with your requests in contempt of Congress and refer them to the Department of Justice, just like what happened with the January 6th committee? Normally, that's not what we have done. When I did oversight for The Financial Services Committee, we were not that aggressive. If they didn't comply, we didn't really do much. But it seems like the path has been paved now for you to go contempt, DOJ, here you go.
Well, we'll see. I mean, look, we hope we got a number of pieces of information we want to get on a host of different issues, the whole school boards issue, what we've learned from whistleblowers, a number of things we want to look at. We expect agencies to comply with document requests and, frankly, to comply if, in fact, we send subpoenas. So we're a long way off from what you just described, Sean, but you know what that process is like because we lived through those some when we were serving together in Congress. So we'll see, but I think we expect them to give them the information we're entitled to, as I said, as a separate and equal branch of government, doing our duty, oversight duty, with the intent of figuring out what kind of legislative changes we need to make so that this kind of stuff doesn't happen in the future.
So, Congressman, the Washington Post is reporting that Hunter Biden's allies are weighing a legal defense fund for the son of the President of the United States. And we know that the New York Post has described him as not his sugar bro. A sugar bro of Hunter Biden's paid off his tax debt. I guess that was to alleviate some of the pressure from this tax investigation. But what do you make of this potential legal defense fund being set up for Hunter Biden?
Yeah, Dagen, I don't know. I guess in some ways nothing surprises me anymore. I do know there was a story a few months ago that there's folks setting up a group of people outside of the White House who are going to come after anyone doing investigations, anyone doing oversight, and they talked about Speaker McCarthy, they talked about Chairman Comer and other members, other of us members here in Congress. So who knows what it's all about? What I want to do is get to the truth, because I think there's been so much egregious activity from federal agencies going after the very people, the American citizens, the very people they're supposed to serve. And the first step in stopping that stuff is to expose it, is to get all the facts, all the information on the table, and then figure out what we can do legislatively that will help prevent this in the future. That's what we're committed to doing, both in Mr. Comer's committee, in some of the select committees that have been created, and in the Judiciary Committee. And we're the committee who's supposed to be focused primarily on protecting the Constitution, the First Amendment, the Second, the things that we learned in the Twitter files were being directly attacked. So that's what we're going to focus on doing.
Just one real quick thing that Andy McCarthy, I was talking to him, I talk to him often, but he pointed out in terms of this investigate, he has said that if there's a special counsel that's needed, it's to oversee the Hunter Biden investigation, and it's being treated as a tax fraud investigation, which means that it's coordinated with Washington, the heart of the Justice Department out of D.C., and not being directly run out of the district in Delaware. But go ahead, Sean.
Good point. So, Congressman, just again, calling out hypocrisy, when you asked for the documents in regard to the classified documents in regard to Joe Biden, the DOJ responded to you and said you also request non-public information that is central to the ongoing special counsel investigation. So in essence, they say, Congressman, there's an ongoing investigation. We can't give you that documentation because it could jeopardize the investigation. But just go back, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, and the DOJ and the FBI continually leaked information out on Donald Trump. It never ended, and that could have jeopardized the Donald Trump investigation as well. It seems, again, there's two standards, one for Trump and now one when you're in the majority in Congress and have the gavel.
Great point, Sean. And remember, clear back when President Trump hasn't even taken the oath of office, between Election Day 2016 and Inauguration Day, January 20th, 2017, Jim Comey goes to New York to brief President Trump, to give him an intel briefing, and talks to him about the dossier, the discredited, phony, baloney dossier, and then they leak that. That is certainly an ongoing investigation. Right. It was all bogus, but it was an ongoing investigation. And then they leaked that information as a way to, I think, do harm and undermine the Trump presidency. So, yeah, you're exactly right. We should be able to get this information. See, particularly the intelligence committees. They even told the witness we had today, Mr. Stern, the general counsel for the National Archives, they had a letter that said he could not answer questions that we asked that might in any way talk about conversations or communications he had with the Justice Department. That's how much they're making sure we don't get access to information.
It's unbelievable, Congressman. It's unbelievable. Listen, go ahead.
You want to ask this or me?
You can go ahead.
No, before we go, you are threatening as chair of the House Judiciary Committee, threatening subpoenas related to the FBI abusing its power, intimidating parents who protested at school board meetings. What can you tell us about this and where you are in getting to the bottom of, again, this National School Boards Association sick the Justice Department on parents who are upset about the children?
Yeah, they set up an apparatus where you could report, some tattletale could report on a mom or dad showing up at a school board meeting, a federal snitch line they set up, and then as a result of people being reported, the FBI put a tag, a designation on that person's name, and 25 parents, we know this because of the whistleblower, FBI whistleblower, 25 parents had an FBI agent show up at their home. Now think about that. None of them were charged, by the way. No one charged, no one arrested, no one prosecuted, but the chilling impact that has. So we want to get to the bottom of how this started, because I actually think it wasn't just the school board's letter that became the predicate. That I think, well, that was the predicate, but I think there was coordination to have the School Boards Association communication prior to that letter between White House and School Boards Association to prompt the whole thing. That's sort of the template we see being used in what we have called this targeting of the government on its, by the government on its citizens.
Congressman Jim Jordan, we are cheering for you to get to the truth, expose it for all of us. Keep up the great work.